Hey everyone, it's Sophie from Build Your Jungle, and today we're going to be repotting a whole bunch of tiny plants. I have loads of tiny plants here. Some of them are mine, some of them are Harriet's, and what they all have in common are being in really rubbish mixes right now. So we're going to put them into some good mixes. I'm presuming that most of these are going to have smaller root systems and will be able to just go back into their original pots with new mixes. Some of them need to go into these little decorative pots that Harriet has got for her room. I also have a couple of these, and before anyone asks what this ridiculous thing is, I've broken my finger and I have one of those makeshift things off Amazon, and I decided that it was impossible for me to do things with my hands without having it strapped up. So I've gone for the yellow one because it's the one I am least likely to ever wear in public. For most of this stuff, I'm going to be using this mix, which is the houseplant base mix, from Soil Ninja. But there are a couple of succulents here, and there's a Peperomia. So I've also brought up some of the cactus and succulent potting mix that is the really sandy, gritty one in a Starbucks cup because it's so heavy I couldn't bring it upstairs. I'm just going to do some classic Sophie repotting chaos right now where I get soil all over here and then I've got a bin bag for after I've done. So let's start with, what should we start with? I'm going to do Harriet's first. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to do Harriet's first. So firstly, we've got this cute little Syngonium. I think it's Syngonium berry. It could do with the water right now. It's really, really compacted though, is this soil, and Harriet would like it in this cute little goldy pot that she's got. When it's smaller plants, or also the fact that I've got a broken finger, but when it's smaller plants, I find it's easier just to wiggle them out gently than to smack them out of the pots. God, that sounds really mean. So firstly, I've knocked all that substrate away. I mean, there's some perlite in this, but it's just not very good, and it was just very compacted. Also, this is a tiny bit larger than this anyway. I don't have this Syngonium, but I actually have a very similar Syngonium from Jules that's, I think, Syngonium Pixie, and it's been really easy to root so far, and usually Syngonium are like pretty easygoing plants, so I think that this was a good one for her, for Harriet, because she's a beginner. It's got some nice roots on there. I am just going to take off this one leaf because it's a bit sus. It's got a tiny baby new leaf up there, so that's good. When I have larger Syngoniums in my room, I do tend to pot them in my aroid mix because some of them, like the T24, they can get really thick roots that are very fast growing, and it works really well for them. A lot of the time I've found that if I use my aroid mix that I usually use for my philodendrons when they're babies, that it actually negatively impacts it because it dries out too quickly in such a small pot. So when plants are wee babbies like this one anyway, I would be more inclined to put them in a base mix, just an airy cocoa flour mix with perlite. And I just gave my friend his Christmas present finally the other day, and it was a philodendron pink princess, and it was in a very small, it's a very small plant, small pot size, so I potted it in this as well. I actually ordered a potting mat the other day, but then they refunded me and it never came. So we're still chucking soil on everything. There we go, so cute. And this plant's really easy. So it's living about a couple of feet back from her window at the moment. It's getting some indirect light. It doesn't require a whole bunch of light, and it also can't tolerate full sun, so it's quite a good spot for it. And it's basically water when it gets dry about halfway down the pot. But as it's winter and edema is very easy to happen, well, it's technically spring now, but it still feels like winter in the UK. I would recommend to her that she maybe let it dry out even a bit more, because it's always safer to underwater than overwater if you're nervous about it. This has these lovely pinky veins. It's very, very cute. So sweet. Let's leave everything a second that's going in the succulent mix. Right, I'm going to do this little ficus next. Oh, by the way, I totally forgot to say, so all of these plants were on a purchase that Harriet did from Plants for All Seasons, and it was for the mixed batch of 6 cm plants. It's a bit of a pick and mix, so you don't get to choose what you get. So then she wanted to split it with me, so we picked like a plant at a time each. The thing they sent us the most of was rubber plants. There was so many. There's this mini Ficus bellies, there's a Ficus teneki and a Ficus shaveriana, which I got to keep, which I'm so excited because that was a wish list plant for me ages ago, and I unalived it, unfortunately, so I get another chance, yes. So this is Harriet's bellies, and it's dried out too much because it's living very close to the radiator. I'll make sure she keeps an eye on that. One of the leaves is dried, so it looks like a very healthy, pest-free, adorable little baby ficus. So, and that came out so easily. I don't know if the growers did this, I presume not Plants for All Seasons, but it's not the worst potting mix, you know, that I've ever seen nursery potted plants be in. Does that make sense? It's actually like, it's got some drainage at least, and I've not seen any root rot or anything. With ficus, I used to really struggle with the elasticas until I started giving them a bunch more light, and it turns out that actually when you give these plants bright light, they will be a lot happier, and not to let them dry out too much because they do like to stay moist and they start drooping and dropping leaves easily if you don't water them for a long time. So this one's living on Harriet's windowsill, and for this one, the base mix works absolutely great. Like, I would recommend using that for ficus at any size. It works so good for begonias as well. It's my absolute go-to. I'm gonna remove this root because it's kind of dried out. I think that will be just fine. And she wanted this one in here. When I repot some of the large plants that my housemates have got for downstairs recently, because I think that it might, for the first time in eons, be doing that horticulture technique where you chop off some of the roots so that the plant can go back into the same pot, which is perfectly fine to do if you're not worried about a plant growing a lot and you want it to stay at the same size, because it wouldn't be practical. Wait, I'm not going to make this mistake that I made yesterday where I tried to blow soil off a leaf and then it went in my eye. There we go. Super cute. And hopefully you can see just by the top of that how much more perlite is in that than this. Also, I can tell there's something added into this that is not just coir. It's either got like peat or soil added in there as well, and it's just not what we want. Go over there, away. And that's super cute though. The green looks so nice with that plant. Next we have Peperomia obtusifolia, or as Plants for All Seasons labeling has dubbed it, Peperomia obtusifolia. This one, when it arrived, what I think has happened is that this petiole has got damaged during transit, and then it's like just rotted basically. So we're gonna get rid of this leaf. And you can see it's already got cute new little growth on there. It's very cool. It's a variegated type of peperomia. It's got these very waxy leaves and it's almost kind of like a Hoya. And you can actually peperomigate, oh my god, propagate peperomia from a single leaf. So I'm going to pop that leaf over there and I'm going to do something with that in a bit. But let's do this little repot first. So Peperomia isn't a succulent, but it is a semi-succulent, so it does prefer to dry out between waterings, and they can also be quite susceptible to root rot, especially when they're in just a normal potting mix like this. So I'm going to be potting this one into the cacti and succulent mix, which will be a lot more suitable for this kind of plant. I don't know if other people have found different in their environments, if you maybe live somewhere very hot and dry. But in England anyway, I absolutely recommend putting Peperomia in a cactus and succulent potting mix. This seems kind of funny that it's just got this very compact root ball. And especially because I speed some of the footage up when I'm doing repots like this, it might look like I'm being really rough on a plant sometimes, but I'm actually being so delicate. Is anyone else really not spontaneous, but they live with people who are very spontaneous? Because I feel like my housemates are constantly coming home with different animals or whatever. They came home with little shrimp, which I have to say I love the shrimp. I love watching the shrimp, and they like eat all the algae and stuff out of the fish tanks. And some of the little fish, all I remember is that they're like zebra and cheetah, but I don't remember what they're called. I think that Aaron said they were called Dannies or Danios or something, but I'm actually really not up on fish. Like I need to like learn more about types of fish and stuff, because it's my housemate that Aaron that is the aquarium guy. I didn't know what the roots were going to look like, but I expected them to be more kind of like that than like this. But got my cup of potting mix. I love this one. I just hate how heavy it is. I'm actually going to pot this one in here because I think it needs a slightly bigger pot, and I'm expecting the calathea and the Dracaena to have quite narrow root systems. Narrow, shallow. What is my brain? I keep saying that every video. These little pots do have drainage, by the way, added bonus. And then because it's Peperomia, I'm just kind of making sure that it's not planted up too high around the petioles, because I don't want it to rot. Adorable. It makes sense, seeing as I've got this potting mix, to do the other succulents here. So this is a really unusual little one. It's got a couple of dried out leaves, lifted leaves. Just removed them. It's on the drier side, which for this genus of plant is probably much better than it being really wet. And it's actually a type of Senecio. I've not heard of this one before. It's written here as Senecio archery Himalaya. It kind of looks to me, and I thought this one was really cool and unusual. It's very soft and, oh, okay, I feel like I'm going to go in Harriet's room just to touch this sometimes because it's really nice. It's a type of succulent, I would presume, with it being Senecio, which is also stuff like string of dolphins, the Mount Everest, the Mont Blanc that sadly perished recently. And this one's quite, you can tell when you stand a plant up and it's like this, it's quite root bound. So this is the one that I think I'm definitely going to have to get a slightly bigger pot for this one. It's actually got 3 plants in here to give it the illusion of the fuller look. And Jane Perrone was actually talking about this on TikTok the other day. That's the author of one of my favorite books, Legends of the Leaf. And she was talking about how growers pot multiple small plants in like this to make certain plants look fuller, but then it can cause issues with overcrowding and stuff when it gets bigger. This is really dry. This potting mix is the worst so far. Like, you can tell that it's from a different grower. It's just like pure coir that's gone really hydrophobic. As I'm getting more into this, I'm actually realizing that there may be less roots than you think, because in the middle, it's just kind of a void of this compact soil. And things that I thought were roots, like as I've got into it, it's actually just kind of those fibery bits that you get in coco coir. But really, like when you're weighing up doing something like this and you're not sure, this is one of the situations where it's very, very much worth doing, because the fact that this already had multiple leaves like drying up and that the soil is this hydrophobic, if this had continued to live in this soil, it would probably just have gradually died of dehydration. Now, I'm not familiar with this plant, but I presume this is like damage from being shipped. Right, so I just asked Harriet and she actually just said that I could have this one and that I'm going to trade her some Maranto for downstairs. So this little cutie, which is still so full. Right, I'm just going back in this pot now because it has a shallow enough root system. So we're doing the cactus and succulent potting mix again. Oops, I forgot to put the plant in. I just filled the thing the whole way up. Just flipping back a minute to my point about overcrowding. That sorted out that problem, didn't it? Somewhere that gets morning sun is much better for this plant. And then with Senecio, I just water when it gets dry. I let it dry out between waterings because it is a succulent, but I don't leave it for as long as I leave a cactus or something which barely gets watered. There we go. I have a spare little 6 cm pot on hand anyway, which I will just use for this little one. Boop. I find it so awkward to do my finger holdy thing with the broken finger there. Oh, by the way, if anyone was wondering, I broke it on a plant. How ridiculous. This is so cute though, it's like funky grass. There are like so many police sirens outside right now. Are you just a wobbly guy? Maybe you are just a wobbly guy, you know? Oh my god, does everybody have to, every minute of the day that it's not raining, do intense garden maintenance? It's all I can hear. It drives me absolutely balmy. We can actually see there how much worse that mix was than that one. Then we have this little Dracaena that, again, they've got 2 plants in the pot there to make it look fuller, if you can imagine. And it's got this lovely strikeness to it. I mean, for a minute I looked at that and I went, is that a spider plant? And then was like, no, it is a Dracaena. This one needs a repot for a different reason than the others, and it's that it's very wet. There seems to be basically no drainage in this, and it's soaking. And Dracaena don't actually need as much water as other plants, especially as a lot of tropical plants, like they can actually go quite a while without water. They're quite drought tolerant, and these roots are just kind of what you would expect, really. There's not many roots here, but the roots that are here look very healthy, actually. I'm surprised that we only had 2 rotty roots in the whole of that situation. Pop them back in this pot. It's just a big chunk of wet dirt. Gross, we hate you. So back to the base mix. I can't believe that I ordered so much soil, and I've still got about half the sack, I think, left of Monstera and Philodendron mix, but I am almost at the end of it with this base mix. It's just very fluffy. I always say it's fluffy, and I like that. Very airy. Doesn't sit all like soggy and wet. Sounds like someone's cutting concrete right now. Oh my god, I am so stupid, right? Dudes, I have just been filming this entire video with the window open, complaining why the garden sounds were so loud. Obviously, they were going to be loud because the window was open. There we go. I've never had a calathea Freddy before. I've also now got one of these. And I think that they're going to be a bit easier, like the orbifolia, like just based on the greenness, the type of leaf, the leaf thickness. But the lancifolia has, since it arrived, yellowed. Like, I don't know if it's picking up that well on camera, but the leaves have a slight yellowy tinge to them, especially in the middle of some of the lower leaves. It could just be the plant acclimatizing to the house. It's probably a little bit of overwatering because I'm not checking the soil before, because there is some white mold just starting on the top soil there, and that's usually a sign of overwatering, and the pots feel a little bit heavy. on the Freddy, one of the leaves had edema, I believe. Oh, it's this one. This one's got a little bit of edema, but if the plant has been overwatered, I'd say it's done pretty well to just have edema on one leaf. So both of these are going into the base mix as well, which I use for all my larger calatheas, and they're doing well. When I'm actually getting to have a bit of a closer inspection of this, I can see that they've definitely pruned some leaves off before sending this plant, because this is a petiole. Here we can see a healthy example of a healthy growth point, which is good. Here we can see an example of a growth point that has rotted. So we're going to remove that, and we're going to remove anything below it that was part of that growth point. Oh, it doesn't want to cut. Oh, there we go. I'm going to get rid of this rotty one and this rotty one. This was definitely the one then that was in the worst health, and then this leaf's just got like shredded, so it's like attached on a thread. So let's take that one off, and these dried up sheaths, because they can tend to be a place for pests to hide, and suddenly that's already looking quite significantly better. I mean, calathea are delicate anyway, but baby calathea can be quite difficult in particular. I have unalived baby ornata, baby, what was it? It's the white one. It's just got this one, there's this one root that shot out, and then it just went for it with all the secondaries. Just a small little root ball. Actually, I'm gonna pop that in there, and I'm gonna take the soil out of the next calathea, and then I'm going to get rid of the soil. And I certainly don't want to be putting my hands in my bag of soil after that. And I also want to get this mold out of here before I open my soil again. So this one's the Freddy. I really like this one, actually. When I saw it, because Harriet ordered herself a Freddy before, and I was like, oh, that's really beautiful. And then in the mixed thing, they sent a Freddy. So she was like, oh, you have this one. So I've got 1, 2. Actually, like when I first got into plants, I was really into the colourful calathea and maranta and stuff. But now I much prefer the green calathea. I really like my arborfolia a lot. I feel like a lot of the time in these tiny 6cm pots, you just end up with loads of soil on the top bit that has nothing in it. And this is interesting because other species of calathea, I see they usually have all fine roots, but this has a combination of fine roots where there was never a root that wasn't in this kind of form, and some of them are more thicker roots, but it's not a tap root. Interesting. I really hate it when they cut part of a leaf off instead of just taking the leaf off. Pretty much all freed up now. Pop them in there and mow. All right, I'm back. I got my thing wet, so I had to change to a different one. Now I'm using the base mix again. Now that I've done this, it'll make upsizing the pot much easier, because I can basically slip pot, but just tease the bottom of the roots from now on, because they're in a good mix. And I wiped all this surface down with antibacterial wipes and stuff before doing this. Now I've just got all the little plants in one of these trays, which has ridges on it like that, and then it lets you water plants and them drain out into it. But what you don't want to do is do so much that it has nowhere to drain. This mix always feels so heavy because it's full of sand. And even though this calathea had edema, it's really important to still water it, because it's currently in a completely dry substrate, and calathea don't like that, but it shouldn't be waterclogged now. So these ones are the ones that I got, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got also a Calathea Freddy, and I currently just slipped it into this pot because this used to have my Aeonium Schwarzkopf in it, but it's had some pest problems at the moment, so it's living in the bathroom. And this pot was just sitting unused, and I was like, that's cute. So presuming that this plant has very few roots like the other Calathea, I will be potting it back into this pot so that it can live in here. This pot doesn't have drainage, you see. And then I've got the return of one of my wishlist plants that I unalived, and it's the Ficus shiveriana. How nice is that variegation? I've also got a little Ficus Taneki, and I'm glad that I've got both of those, because other than that, the only Ficus in this house that are actually my Ficus elastica are these and the big Abajam that I've got just there. And then there's this pretty dark looking kind of aloe, which I think is quite cool, and it's very textured. It's called Aloe Delta, D Delta. Apparently, I'm gonna have to look into that because, again, I've never heard of this. I like succulents, and I've never actually had an aloe. I have this blue pot, and I am not a big pot person. I mean, I know that I've just shown this little cute pot, but usually it is rare for me to be that bothered about putting stuff in pots. Like, I have some of my favorites are in some lovely little pots. But how nice is that allocation? But for most of my aeros and stuff, I've just got so many of them. They're just in nursery pots. But the exception to that rule for me is cacti and succulents, because I like them on my windowsills and I like them in the cute little pots. So that one's going in there. And then I've got this little string of hearts, and it's actually perfect because this is my string of hearts. And while it is long, it is very bare on the top. So I think that will help fill it out nicely. I'm gonna do the simple ones first. So these three. Ooh, this one has a lot better roots than the other Freddy did. I think I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to make it have transplant shock. And again, this one's quite wet and dense. Oh, it's got this adorable little new leaf. By the way, if anyone else is into sci-fi stuff, has anyone else been watching the new series of Halo? And what do you think of it? Because I absolutely love it. Like, I used to play the Halo games probably from an inappropriately young age, to be honest. I think I had the first Halo when I was 6 years old. But I really, really loved Halo. So, and I think if you're a fan of the games, it's really true to the games, but then also bringing something new. These are the roots. So nice. And then, because I've just decided randomly with these three that I'm unpotting them all first. There is one little crispy leaf. And I don't know if this is like a common problem with the Shiveriana, or if that's just it starting to crisp up, but this is kind of what happened to mine last time, is it got this oranginess all over it and then dropped all loose. So hopefully we're all right this time. It looks like Captain Kirk is looking very intently at this Shiveriana. Last time I had one of these, I really don't think I gave it enough light. And I've since learned how well the Ficus elastica responds to light. So I'm definitely going to be giving this one some bright light from my grow lights. Whereas before it was getting more kind of like filtered light. And this one's got some really good roots. I'm actually going to be putting this in a clear pot, so that one we'll do in a sec. Yay. And then this one. Yeah, I don't know why. Literally every time I've had 6 cm pot calatheas, they always have either root rot or just tiny root systems that haven't filled out the pot yet. There we go. Very nice. And then I'm just going to, boop, really sweet. I'm just going to take my string of hearts, like I talked about before, and I'm going to pop this in with this. This one's very much only just rooted, and then we've got some little tubers on here. You can bury the tubers. Someone asked me about this the other day, and you can bury the tubers, but you can also have them like hanging out as well in different parts of the plant. In fact, I swear there was one, here, the tiny little one there. I'm just gonna get it out and have a look because I'm not sure how rooty we are. Okay, we're nice and rooty, but we're not so rooty that we have to come out of this pot. And we've got room for some friends. Hopefully these ones carry on rooting for me in here. And string of hearts, I actually found that I used to really struggle with it until I had it in an area with high humidity. This plant actually loves high humidity and the growth speeds up quite a lot. And that's so much better. And I'm definitely going to keep propping this and putting it back in to help fill it out more. There we go. Hopefully it's not got too much darker because I've had to unplug one of my grow lights to plug my phone in. I'm just going to do this little aloe, and first I'm just going to remove that leaf because I think this one's had a bit of a slight underwatering problem. So this is the only one of mine that I'm putting in a little cover pot. It's this cute blue one. And I'm surprised they've managed to underwater this because it's actually in a normal houseplant potting mix. Now that all came off nice and easily. It's got nice healthy roots. It does seem that this snapped. Yeah, this is one that just did not travel. Didn't travel the best, but it's still very cute and it's got a new little leaf coming there. So I'm not that fussed about the fact that I just lost that leaf. And in there, oh, that'll be so cute. So I'm using the cactus and succulent potting mix again. And then instead of just pushing it down like that and having all the roots flat together, I kind of hold it up like this and I start to fill it in so that the first lot of roots are kind of lower down in the pot, and then it allows them to be more spread out with substrate in between, and it's less likely to get root rot. I'll give that one a water as well, and that's going to just live on my windowsill. And then here I have an Aeonium that I don't actually know the species of, just Aeonium SP. Just remove some of the lower leaves, and this is a plant that my friends bought me back from Spain, and this is just kind of what they do at winter, is they always lose lower leaves and stuff. But it's been growing in this clear pot and it's been needed to be repotted for ages now because the roots are at the bottom. So I'm putting that plant into this pot, and then this one is going to steal this pot. So anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me repot some tiny plants. Let me know down in the comments if you've been repotting anything recently, tiny or otherwise. Sand just fell out at the bottom of here. At the moment, I'm posting long form content on Friday, so please do hit that button, subscribe to be notified when I next make a video. I'm also posting every day on TikTok. There's all kinds of funky business on there, and so also occasionally on Instagram, so please do check those out. If you fancy buying some illustrated houseplant products, then please head over to my website. It's buildyourjungle.com, and I hope you're having a great day thinking about houseplants.